Deadpool, Venom, the X-Men. These characters from the Marvel Universe are titans in our popular culture today. Their fantastic storylines and adventures captivate millions of readers around the world, and they all spring from the mind of a writer located here in Missouri, Cullen Bunn. Cullen has been a writer of comic books, short stories, and novels for almost 20 years, and has become one of the most celebrated authors in his field during that time. Though he is now an established presence in the industry, he got his start through his own hard work and initiative, creating his own comic book before ever signing with a publisher. And his epic journey began from a simple boyhood dream, to be a storyteller.
Stories are just something that I've always wanted to tell. My dad was a natural-born storyteller, and I think I picked that up from him, and I always wanted to tell stories. I didn't care if that was going to be in comics or in short stories or novels or whatever. I didn't care the medium. I just wanted to tell stories. I was a voracious comic book reader, especially as a kid. There were a couple of books that I can point to that these books really inspired me and kind of told me that this is what I wanted to do. There was a book, it's based on a toy line called Micronauts that was written by Bill Mantlo. It was the first experience I had where I was really recognizing that the writer was doing so much world building. They were building story upon story upon story and just history and lore, and that just set a fire in me. I attended college with the intent of being a writer. So I did get a degree in creative writing from, at the time it was Southwest Missouri State. Now I think it's just Missouri State. A story is just a tale told from one person to another. The fallacy of it is a story is just something a storyteller presents, and that's not the case. The storyteller is always collaborating with the audience, because the audience will interpret that story and react to that story in different ways. So it's really, a story is a collaboration between the storyteller and the audience. First and foremost, it's always been very important to me that when people read my work, they just have fun doing it and they enjoy it. So my primary goal is to reach that enjoyment factor for the reader. My process is very outline driven. After I have the idea of what the story will be, and that could be just a line or two, it could be just a notion in my head. After I have that idea, I go through 3, 4, 5 outline stages. They could even read like fight, talk, run, fight, talk. I break down the story in how many pages I think that section of the story is going to be, and then I outline it again in a little more detail, and I outline it again in a little more detail. Outlining's pretty important just about in everything I do, but in comics in particular, it's essential, because comics, unlike a novel or a short story or a screenplay, everything is very regimented. I am restricted by the number of issues in a series, the number of pages in an issue, the number of panels on a page. So I really have to go through a lot of outlining before I ever get to the actual scripting process, or I get myself into a lot of trouble. So by the time I'm actually sitting down to script a comic, I know everything that's going to happen on every panel of that issue. Becoming a comic book writer is different for everyone. For me, it took me a long time to actually get my foot in the door with a publisher and have my first work published. The best advice I could give someone who wants to break in as a comic book writer is just create a comic book. And that sounds kind of like a cheat, but it's true, especially now. There shouldn't be a gatekeeper stopping you from creating a comic book. Go out there, find an artist, learn to draw yourself, whatever it takes, and get a comic book made. If your goal is to work for Marvel or DC or something like that, you can still use your creator-owned stuff to introduce yourself to those publishers. But I certainly would not advise people to wait for a publisher to give them permission to create something.